Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sonia, and today I have a very interesting topic for you, and it's how to get over your ex. Okay, using how I got over my own ex as an example. Okay, it was a 3-year relationship which shouldn't have started, and I want to use it as an example to illustrate some of the key concepts that I would like to talk about today. Um, Getting over one's ex is a very popular question that I tend to get from clients, from different people, and it's also kind of a key topic that comes out a lot in my friendship circles as well. So I'd just like to talk about what makes it so difficult to let go of an ex or previous relationship, and I also like to share a little bit about my experience, as well as some things that you can look out for when you embark on a new relationship, or before you actually embark on a new relationship with someone. So first things first, what makes it so difficult to let go of a previous relationship or a previous boyfriend or girlfriend? Um, One of the biggest things is the story that we actually told ourselves about this person and about the relationship. And whenever I hear someone, when they come to me and they'll be like, oh, Sonia, this is my relationship was this and that, and this happened, this thing happened this year, and it happened this and happened that. Um, when there's a very very like neat narrative where there's a beginning, an end, a conflict, a conclusion, or maybe a question, it's actually a very big sign that the person has been rehearsing this narrative about their relationship for a very very long time. And the problem about the stories that we create about previous relationship is that it is usually never accurate. Okay, it's a never a very accurate representation of what really went on in the relationship. This is because when we actually tell stories, we cherry pick a lot of particular or specific scenarios to actually give the impression of the relationship more flavor. So our story is always formed from the perception that we have of the person and of the relationship. And throw in things like what if scenarios, where we imagine how things could have been like, if this person did this and if this person did that. We replay a lot of memories, okay? Um, we analyze conversations that in a certain way, and we also assign certain meaning to events that happen in our relationship that may or may not be accurate. Okay, usually stories can actually become very skewed and very warped because we tend to want to tell ourselves a certain story of the relationship to make ourselves or our minds believe that something went on. So for example, I actually have a lot of people actually come to me and they tell me that they actually have this relationship with someone, or they had this relationship with someone, and the more I actually listen to the story, the more I actually think that um there wasn't actually a real relationship. It was actually made up by the person. So a lot of times, stories involve a lot of romanticizing of the person, romanticizing of the past, kind of, just uh, talking about things in a very very positive way that may not be reflective of reality. So the stories that we tell ourselves can be very can make it very difficult for us to break free, because a lot of people tell themselves stories about their ex, where their ex is like this perfect person that can't do any wrong, and that the relationship was like a fairy tale, but but it ended, right? So be careful of the kind of stories that you actually tell about people, because a lot of times we want to have maintain a certain or preserve a certain image of the person or the relationship, so we're not actually very honest with ourselves about what actually happened. The second thing I actually want to talk about is nostalgia. um Nostalgia is a very tricky thing. Okay, we can delve or dwell on a lot of nostalgic memories in a relationship, where if you happen to notice, a lot of these memories actually go back to the very beginning stages of the relationship, when the person hasn't really unfolded yet, and when things haven't really gone wrong yet, so to speak, right? um, when we dwell on those things, it actually also, like what I mentioned earlier about the stories, it gives us a very skewed perception of the relationship. This is because when we are nostalgic for something, okay, we are always harking back to a particular memory or the particular stage of a relationship, which makes us feel very good. And we constantly ask ourselves, why couldn't the relationship be like what it was before? Okay. Why did it end? Why did it end up the way it did when it was so good at the beginning? The problem in nostalgia is we will take specific memories and specific parts of the relationship and make it really, really huge and make it seem like, hey, we had all these things that went on before. Why can't we go back to what it was before? You know, why did it have to end? The thing about nostalgia is that nostalgia doesn't mean that feeling nostalgic for something or someone doesn't mean that what you actually shared with the person in the past was actually a very good thing. I have, or you may have as well, experienced a lot of nostalgia for your childhood, for things that went on in the past. There may be certain experiences in your life that you actually want to repeat again, or you want to go back to that time again. Um, the thing about nostalgia is that it just cherry picks the positive stuff, but it completely again neglects the negative stuff that could have come along during that phase of time as well. As I would share about my ex later on, um, I have a lot of nostalgia in terms of our relationship because he kind of like, especially at the beginning, because there were certain periods at that point in time where I felt really positive about him, but I completely forgot that it was exactly those periods of times where he actually showed his not very nice self as well. So nostalgia can actually be very tricky. It can actually skew your perception. So beware whenever you start to get a bit nostalgic for your ex. Um, just ground yourself in reality and and realize that how the relationship unfolded was not something that you actually really wanted. The third thing is memories. I've already talked about it just now. Some memories can be very intense or significant because they hold very special emotional episodes for us and can make it very difficult to move on. So, certain memories of going somewhere with this person, sharing certain foods, sharing certain, music, sharing, very specific, parts of your life with this person. Um, and sometimes memories can be also quite tricky because although we all think that we have great memories and that we remember everything exactly as it happened, the human mind can be a huge prankster. Okay, so things that you actually remember or you thought actually happened may not actually be the reality of it. So, for example, you can have two people in the same room experiencing the same thing, but both of them will remember very, very different parts of their experience. You can try this on, with someone. Both of you attend maybe a talk or a meeting or gathering or whatever. And after that, have a little bit of a debrief and see what you actually took away from that particular meeting. And you'll find that our perceptions, our personalities, and our values actually shape how we actually take in information. So the memory that you may be having, okay, is very much influenced by your character, your values, and what was going on for you at that point in time. So when you're under a lot of stress, you tend to remember things a little bit differently and you tend to give a different meaning to the emotion that was present at that point in time as well. So be careful of memories, okay? It's not that we all have, inaccurate memories, but just be careful of kind of harping or kind of anchoring yourself to a particular memory and then not making an attempt to move on from that memory, because at the end of the day a lot of people come in and out of our lives and we have various experiences and various memories with them. It doesn't mean that you don't treasure the memory or you just like discard it. Of course, with people, even people who have broken up with us or people that we have broken up with, we do have positive memories of them, but also make sure to balance that positive memory with the not so positive stuff that actually happened and which, actually made the relationship end. So these are the three things: stories, nostalgia, and memories, which makes it very difficult to let go of a relationship. And before I get into kind of like the strategies for how to actually date or how to get over your ex, I just want to talk a little bit about my relationship. So this relationship was a 3-year relationship, and it kind of started off on the wrong foot. Okay, and it shouldn't have started and it shouldn't have continued because we're actually very, very different people. So at the beginning, he was very hot and cold with me. And because I had a very anxious attachment style at the time, I'm very familiar with this kind of hot cold behavior because my dad is actually like that as well. And a lot of men in my life at that point in time was also like that. And I gravitated towards a lot of emotionally unavailable people. So this hot cold thing actually made me even more interested in him. Okay, and he actually admitted at the beginning that he wasn't very into me. Um, and but he did, enjoy my friendship. So we were friends. But he was very nice to me. So on the first couple of dates, I remembered he was just criticizing my hair, my dressing, and the clothing that actually you know came out with. And it was really strange because at the time I had very low self-esteem as well. So I took those things to be like very, very, very negatively, and I blamed myself for not actually putting in more effort into my appearance. And that was one. Okay. He also had um he had very, very strange boundaries with women and with his own exes. Okay, so the dynamic that we had never made me feel safe. Okay, because firstly, I was already anxiously attached, but he'll feed into this trust issues, by just constantly contacting his ex and telling me that it's just a friendship, constantly doing this and that. And then whenever I had an issue with it, like when I brought up like the whole thing about like why are you texting his ex, why are you hanging out with this colleague, this female colleague, one on one until so late at night, and you guys are drinking and I don't know what you guys are doing, he would kind of turn it around and act like it was very normal and blame it on me. Okay, he would say that I was very insecure, blah 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 blah. But with life experience, I realized that he and I had very different values. Okay, he didn't really have boundaries with women, although he said he did. And I never acted like that with my male friends. And our values were actually very, very different. So, in this sense, if I had gotten to know him better before we got together, I wouldn't have gotten together with him because he was just not my type at all. Um, Another issue I had with him is that he watched a lot of porn. Okay, and he had been watching this since he was a very young kid. So it's basically like an addiction. Yeah. And the same with, I won't go too much into detail of why I think porn watching is actually not an amazing thing to actually have in a relationship. Not only because I have major issues with the porn industry, but when someone has been exposed to a lot of very, very heavy sexual content at a very young age, they reach their threshold very, very quickly, in that they always need something more sexually stimulating to make them aroused or make them horny or whatever it is. So, in that way, watching porn can actually desensitize you to women's bodies, men's bodies. It can desensitize you to a lot of sexual acts, and it can actually make sex feel very, very like, just something for you to get off, right? Um, and I noticed that he was incredibly disrespectful of people's physical boundaries, very touchy, um, and constantly talked about sex or brought it up. And it was just very, very different from me because I, I'm not like that at all. So him watching a lot of porn didn't make me feel good as well, and it just made me think like, our upbringing was probably quite different. So our entire dynamic never made me feel safe, like not at all. He also was a fast forwarder, someone that actually, um, what do you call it, love bombed me quite a bit. So he kind of was like, oh, very, very into me, very, very into communicating, over communicating at first. And he wanted to get married like really quickly. I was very young at the time, and I was still in school, still in college, and I wasn't ready for commitment at all. Wasn't ready to get married to anyone. Wasn't ready to be anyone's wife. Um, so I felt really, really pressured by his kind of like, his need to want to commit. I felt really pressured by it. Didn't really know how to handle it. Um, and honestly, there was so many other things, but our values were actually not the same. We didn't know each other well at all. I didn't know him well at all, and I looking back, I should have taken the time to get to know him, because if then I wouldn't have gotten together with him. Um, and at that time, I was also a very superficial person. Okay, so I actually only liked him because I thought he had very nice hair, he was tall, and he was cute. That was it. I know. It's very, very superficial and not something that I really recommend people do, as I will talk about a little bit later as well. And I realized that I actually didn't love him that much. Okay, because if someone actually came into my life at that point in time, um, I would get very tempted and very distracted. So love wasn't on the table at all, and I didn't really think he loved me at all. So basically, when we broke up, he moved on very quickly and married someone else. I didn't feel anything, to be honest, because I was really over him. But it did make me wonder about whether he cheated and whether yeah, and all of that. So anyway, enough about my ex. I want to now kind of talk to you a little bit about how to actually get over your ex, or the things that you should actually look out for when you start seeing someone, to prevent all these things from happening. So the very first thing, okay, to heal and to move on from a past relationship is to really get real about the relationship. Take off those rose colored glasses, examine the relationship honestly and objectively. Okay, so this means not telling stories, not being nostalgic for certain memories, and not constantly bringing up positive stuff, but acknowledging both the good and the bad. So you definitely had the joy, the joyous happiness, and all the great stuff. You definitely had the down stuff as well, where you're feeling actually really sad. Um, so when you actually, really delve into the reality of the relationship and what really went on and get a very balanced perspective, you will start to see like why certain things worked out and why certain things didn't work out. Okay. Um, Getting real means that you also confront the less pleasant aspects of your ex in your relationship. And you'll finally get to see why the relationship was not flawless, okay, and that it ultimately ended for a reason. When I got real about the ex I was talking about, I realized that we weren't compatible at all. At all. Okay. Our values didn't match at all. But if I only just, harped a lot on the positive stuff, the places that we went to, the good things that we had, yeah, it was very difficult. It would have been very difficult to move on. So you remember to get real and to get grounded about the relationship. The second thing is, so this kind of works in relationships as well as on dates, but we need to actually learn as a society to stop overvaluing chemistry and connection over a person's character and values. Okay, chemistry, yeah, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have chemistry with the person that you meet or the person that you're in a relationship with, because they can feel, like you are siblings or like you are roommates. Um, but it's not everything. Okay, chemistry and connection is this other thing I want to talk about. The thing about connection is that there are some people that are just very, very good at building rapport with people. And I have to say that I am someone like that as well because of my day job. Okay, because I talk to a lot of people, I have to build rapport very quickly. So talking to someone or having a great conversation with someone is not something that I find amazing. Okay, to me it's just another conversation. But I've gotten feedback from other people that have spoken to me before that they actually really, really enjoyed the conversation and they wanted to continue with it. But for me, I'm just like, it's just a conversation. So remember that sometimes chemistry and connection is not objective. It's something that you feel yourself because of your perception about the interaction that you had with the person, but the person may not actually feel the same way. Okay? The things you should be looking out for should be, your values, whether they match, whether he's there for you, he or she is there for you in tough times, whether they share the same outlook and direction, in life with you. These are the things that really matter. When you don't have these things, the chemistry and connection is going to be very shaky. So remember that chemistry and connection isn't really everything. The third thing I would like to say is that some people get into relationships or stay in relationships, or they cannot get over their ex because they're like, oh my god, like he was so good looking, he was so tall, tall, dark, and handsome. I can never find someone like that again. He was very rich. He took me out on all these dates, spent a lot of money on me, blah blah blah. All these things are just superficial stuff. Okay. It doesn't mean anything. Person can be spending millions of dollars on you, But at the end of the day, don't care about you, doesn't care about your feelings, has no boundaries, doesn't share your values, things like that. And those things will really, it will hurt you, after a period of time. So being attracted to superficial stuff, like, oh, he's cute or whatever, that's fine, but it's important that we actually learn to kind of get to know someone's values, beliefs, passions, friends, and things like that, instead of just focusing on the superficial. So when we actually try to get over an ex, it's not so much about like, oh, he was good looking, sex was good, or whatever it was, he was rich, but focus on the bigger stuff. Did you guys have the same values? I think not. So don't be distracted by all these, surface stuff. The fourth thing is to set boundaries um, early. Okay, and this sets the expectations for relationships. So setting boundaries at the beginning of the dating phase is actually really, really important. But also when you actually think back about your relationship, think about whether you guys actually have boundaries. A lot of people don't know what boundaries are. Okay, and a lot of people also do not realize that their relationship didn't have boundaries. So checking your partner's phone, checking your partner's diary, reading their private stuff, checking their mail, going out with members of the opposite sex and pissing them off and then not doing anything about it, all those are boundary issues. And once you actually have a boundary issue and you brought it up to the person, and the person is just like, nah, you're insecure, just like my ex, or you need to get over yourself and stuff like that, you guys are not fit for each other. Okay, there is a value difference issue there, or this person is just incredibly not empathetic and selfish. So when you're in a relationship like that, or when you had an ex like that who didn't have boundaries, just leave them alone. Okay, because boundaries are not something that you can magically have. It's something that actually comes from your values. So if you don't value the same things as your ex, you are not going to have the same boundaries as your ex. And if he's someone that is like, oh, I don't think my boundaries are like, I don't want to change for you, and you can keep being upset and stuff like that, yeah, leave them in the past. They are not for you. Okay, so boundaries, setting boundaries at the beginning, and also kind of analyzing whether the boundaries were actually working for you in the relationship. Another very important thing is, do they actually make you feel safe in the relationship? Is it someone that you can trust, someone that can make you feel safe? Do they comfort you? Do you feel like you're always suspicious about their reactions or their interactions with other people? Sometimes it's not because we have an anxious like attachment style. It's because these people have certain behaviors or certain things about them that our subconscious is picking up that didn't make you feel safe. So think about your previous relationship. Did the person actually make you feel safe in emotional, physical, and psychological ways? Because if you are not feeling safe, you will never have a settled proper relationship. Okay, um, this is something a bit separate. I might do another video on this, but obsessing over controlling someone and being anxious about the relationship isn't really love. A lot of people confuse these three things for love, and it isn't. Anxiety is what I described with what I felt for my ex. I was always very, very high when and very nervous. When I was around him. That's not love. That's anxiety. um if you're like this around your ex, or if he actually displayed behaviors that were like obsessive and overly controlling, put too many boundaries in place for you. Okay, boundaries can also be a form of control. um that is actually really not love, especially when they tell you, oh, I love you and stuff like that, but you can't do this, can't do that, can't do all of these things. That's not really love, that's control. Yeah, so if you actually experience any of these three in your previous relationship, it wasn't a healthy one. Okay, and it wasn't love. Okay, it was obsession, it's control, it's anxiety, but it's not love. So you experience any of this with your ex or in your previous relationship, it's okay. um just leave them in the past. And the next thing is, um that's something that I actually kind of hear sometimes, and people come to me and they be like, oh, I regret not staying with him because now look at him, he's so rich and stuff like that. I'm not someone that really banks on the potential of the person. I bank on what I actually see and what I'm actually experiencing now, and what he actually went through before he met me. So potential is not something that is guaranteed. He cannot guarantee that he will be a good person in the future, but at least it's something that you can guarantee now. um a lot of people are stay in relationships or cannot get over relationships because they're like, oh, the person can change. Yeah, everybody can change, but do they want to? Have they been displaying behaviors that show that they want to change? it's very difficult to change. Okay, so most people actually, they change for a while and then they go back to who they were before. Start seeing people for who they are. Okay, so currently, if you're having like issues in your relationship or you just broke up with someone, is going back to my first point: get real, see them for who they are, and not for like who they will be in future, but who they are right now, and evaluate a person and evaluate a relationship based on that. Um, I have a couple of people come to me because they had major issues with their partner's past. The thing is that a lot of people say, "Oh, the past doesn't matter" and stuff like that. But which I kind of agree. But I feel that it does matter up to a certain point because your past data, your past behaviors is data for me, to kind of evaluate how you behave right now. Okay, um, and what matters is also how the person right now sees his or her past and certain actions that they actually performed before. So if you were a bit of a jerk in the past and then you don't really think there's anything wrong with it right now, it doesn't show that you have been growing or you have been learning. Okay. A lot of our past experiences shape who we are now. So when a person is not comfortable talking about certain things about the past, or they brush it aside, or you are not comfortable with their past, um, do take that into consideration when you're trying to continue the relationship, because sometimes the past does matter, okay, and it matters a lot. The other thing, okay, the last thing actually really is that sometimes people they break up and then they're like, oh my god, I was actually in love with this person, but a lot of times love is actually not enough. um, you can really really love someone, but you can be incompatible, completely incompatible in terms of lifestyle and values. You can be completely just on different wavelengths when it comes to commitment. And it could be also a case where you love each other but you just are incredibly unwilling to compromise for the other. And sometimes long distance relationships have this issue, okay, the compromising, where I've seen couples that have come to me where two people are in different countries, but one doesn't want to move to the other person's country, although they can, things like that. So love sometimes is an amazing feeling, but it's not enough, because when you want to have a relationship that is long term, and you want something that grows, you do need compatibility, commitment, and compromise. Okay, so these are some of the couple of things that I feel that you should keep in mind and think about when you actually enter a relationship, and when you also reflect on the relationship that just passed by. Because a lot of the times we kind of beat ourselves up on the relationships that actually went by, and we are like, oh, we should have done better, we should have this and that. But a lot of the times, we were just not good for each other. Okay, we're not compatible in some way. Um, so how do you get over your ex? Remember, keep it objective, keep it real. Think about the bigger things like your values, your character. Were they really, did you guys really had similar boundaries? Were they controlling? Did they have a past that you had an issue with? Or sometimes it's a sign of value differences. Things like that actually matter. And sometimes realizing that you guys were just not a great fit, um, no matter how much you love each other, it actually helps you to move on. And once you move on, it opens the doors to other better relationships out there for you. So I just wanted to kind of quickly talk about this topic today. I hope it was helpful in some way. And yeah, I'll be back next with other relationship related videos. So do subscribe, and do my, if you want to keep in touch, my Instagram is actually linked below. So thank you for listening, and I'll be back soon. See you in the next video.